The neon-soaked corridors of Cosmos Point hummed with the usual chaos of a frontier trading station. Marcus Kane adjusted his worn leather jacket and stepped around a puddle of something that glowed an unsettling shade of green. After 15 years of trading runs through the Outer Rim, he'd learned not to ask questions about mysterious substances on station floors. His cargo hold was finally full: rare earth minerals from the Kepler mines, vintage electronics from the tech graveyards of New Geneva, and enough synthetic caffeine to keep a small army awake for a month. It had been a good week, and Marcus was looking forward to the long haul back to the core worlds where his cargo would fetch premium prices. The sound of raised voices echoed from a side corridor, followed by what sounded like a struggle. Marcus paused, his hand instinctively moving to the plasma pistol at his hip. Station security was notoriously unreliable, and getting involved in someone else's trouble was usually a quick way to end up in a holding cell or worse. But the voice that cut through the commotion made him stop in his tracks. "I said I'm not interested in your proposition," came a melodic voice, speaking accented standard with an almost musical quality. "Please step aside." The response was a harsh laugh and the unmistakable sound of someone being shoved against a wall. Marcus cursed under his breath and moved toward the noise. He'd always been a sucker for helping people in trouble, even when his better judgment screamed at him to walk away. The side corridor was dimly lit, but Marcus could make out 3 figures cornering a fourth against the grimy wall. The 3 were clearly smugglers: cheap body armor, outdated weapons, and the kind of swagger that came from picking on people who couldn't fight back. Their target was partially hidden in shadow, but Marcus caught a glimpse of pale blue skin and flowing dark hair. "Come on, sweetheart," one of the smugglers was saying, his voice dripping with false charm. "We're offering you good money for just a little of your time. Celestine healers are worth their weight in platinum to the right buyers." Celestine. Marcus had heard of them but never met one. They were supposed to be incredibly rare, with abilities that bordered on the mystical. No wonder these lowlifes were interested. "I am not a healer," the woman replied, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "And I am not interested in your offer." "See, that's where you're wrong," the smuggler continued, pulling out a neural disruptor. "We're not really asking." That was Marcus's cue. He stepped out of the shadows, his plasma pistol already drawn. "Gentlemen, I think the lady made herself clear." The 3 smugglers spun around, and Marcus got his first clear look at their intended victim. She was indeed Celestine. Her skin had the characteristic pale blue tint that seemed to glow softly in the dim light, and her hair was so dark it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. But it was her eyes that caught his attention. They were the color of deep space, filled with stars that actually seemed to twinkle. "This doesn't concern you, traitor," the lead smuggler snarled, recognizing Marcus's profession from his clothes and bearing. "Walk away and forget you saw anything." "Actually," Marcus said, keeping his weapon trained on them, "I'm pretty sure it does concern me now." The lady said no. That should be the end of it. The Celestine woman used the distraction to her advantage. She moved with fluid grace, striking pressure points on the nearest smuggler with precision that would have impressed a combat medic. The man dropped like a stone, his disruptor clattering to the floor. Marcus whistled appreciatively. "Nice moves." "I am not helpless," she replied, a hint of amusement in her voice as she retrieved the fallen weapon. The remaining 2 smugglers found themselves facing a trained trader with a military-grade plasma pistol and a Celestine who clearly knew how to handle herself. The smart play was obvious. "This isn't over," the lead smuggler muttered, but he was already backing away. "We know you're here now." "Good," Marcus said cheerfully. "That'll save me the trouble of hunting you down if you decide to bother the lady again." The smugglers retreated, dragging their unconscious companion with them. Marcus holstered his weapon and turned to the Celestine woman, who was watching him with those incredible star-filled eyes. "Thank you," she said, inclining her head in what seemed like a formal gesture. "I am Zara Vale." "Marcus Kane," he replied, offering his hand in the human fashion. "And you're welcome, though it looked like you had things pretty well in hand." Zara took his hand, and Marcus felt a strange tingling sensation at the contact. Her skin was warm despite its pale appearance, and incredibly soft. Perhaps, but your intervention was timely. I am in your debt. No debt necessary, Marcus said, though he found himself reluctant to let go of her hand. Just doing what anyone decent would do. Zara's eyes widened slightly, and Marcus could have sworn he saw the stars in them brighten. You are unexpected, Marcus Kane. Most of your species would have demanded payment or recognition for such assistance. Most of my species are idiots, Marcus replied, earning another of those musical laughs. Besides, I've got a thing about bullies. Always have. They stood there for a moment, still holding hands, and Marcus felt that strange tingling sensation spreading up his arm. It wasn't unpleasant, quite the opposite, actually. It was like being energized and relaxed at the same time. We should soul weave, Zara said suddenly, her voice soft but intense. It would be appropriate. Marcus blinked. He'd never heard the term before, but it sounded vaguely spiritual. Probably some kind of Celestine gratitude ritual. Sure, he said with a grin. Though I have to warn you, I'm not much for ceremonies. I'm more of a handshake and a drink kind of guy. Zara's smile was radiant, and Marcus felt his breath catch. Yes, she said, I think you are exactly what I need. They chatted for a few more minutes about the station, the smugglers, and the general state of frontier security. Zara was intelligent and well-traveled, with a dry sense of humor that caught Marcus off guard. She was also breathtakingly beautiful, in a way that seemed to transcend species barriers. When they finally parted ways, Marcus found himself watching her walk away until she disappeared around a corner. He stood there for a long moment, replaying their conversation in his mind. There had been something about her, something that made him feel more alive than he had in years. He shook his head and headed back toward the main corridor. He had a cargo run to complete, and dwelling on chance encounters with mysterious alien women was not productive. But as he made his way back to his ship, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. The thought stayed with him as he completed his pre-flight checks and filed his departure manifest. Even as his ship lifted off from Cosmos Point and jumped to hyperspace, Marcus found himself thinking about star-filled eyes and that strange tingling sensation when they touched. He told himself it was just attraction, she was beautiful, intelligent, and had handled herself well in a dangerous situation. It was natural that he'd be interested. But deep down, Marcus suspected there was more to it than that. Something about Zara Vale had gotten under his skin, and he had the distinct feeling that his life was about to become much more complicated. 3 days later, that feeling would prove to be absolutely correct. Marcus was elbow-deep in the engine compartment of his ship, the Stellar Wanderer, when the airlock chimed. He froze, wrench in hand, and listened to the familiar hiss of the outer door cycling. The ship was docked at a refueling station in the Vega system, and he wasn't expecting anyone. In his line of work, unexpected visitors usually meant trouble. He grabbed his plasma pistol from the tool bench and made his way to the airlock, moving quietly through the corridors of his ship. The inner door was already opening when he reached it, which meant whoever was outside had the override codes or some very sophisticated hacking equipment. Marcus raised his weapon, then nearly dropped it when he saw who was standing in his airlock. Hello, Marcus Kane, Zara Vale said, her star-filled eyes twinkling with what looked like amusement. I hope I'm not intruding. She was even more beautiful than he remembered. Her pale blue skin seemed to glow in the artificial light of his ship, and her dark hair fell in waves over her shoulders. She wore a form-fitting outfit in deep purple that looked both elegant and practical, with intricate silver embroidery that seemed to shift and move as she breathed. Zara? Marcus lowered his weapon, completely bewildered. What are you doing here? How did you even find me? Celestine navigational abilities are quite advanced, she said, stepping fully into his ship. We can track resonance patterns across vast distances once we've established a connection. She moved with that same fluid grace he remembered, but there was something different about her now. She seemed more confident, more purposeful. And there was an intensity in her gaze that made Marcus's pulse quicken. Connection, he repeated, still trying to process her sudden appearance. What connection? Zara tilted her head, studying him with those incredible eyes. The one we established 3 days ago. When we agreed to soul weave. She paused, her expression shifting to something like confusion. You do remember agreeing, don't you? Marcus felt a sinking sensation in his stomach. Zara, I think there might have been some kind of misunderstanding. When you mentioned soul weaving, I thought you were talking about some kind of gratitude ritual or ceremony. The silence that followed was deafening. Zara's eyes widened, and Marcus could see the stars in them flicker like they were being disturbed by some cosmic wind. You thought it was a ceremony, she said slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. Well, yeah, Marcus replied, feeling increasingly uncomfortable. I mean, I've never heard the term before, and you seem to be thanking me for helping you, so I just assumed. Zara sank into one of his chairs, her hands pressed to her temples. Oh, sacred stars. What have I done? Marcus holstered his weapon and moved closer, genuinely concerned. Zara, what's wrong? What did I miss? She looked up at him, and Marcus was startled to see what looked like tears in her eyes, though they seemed to sparkle and shimmer like liquid starlight. Soul weaving, she said carefully, is not a ceremony. It's a bonding ritual among my people. When two beings soul weave, they become connected on the deepest possible level, emotionally, spiritually, and sometimes even physically. It's reserved for life partners, for those who wish to share their very essence. Marcus felt like he'd been hit by a meteor. Life partners? Zara, I barely know you. I know, she said, her voice thick with emotion. But among my people, when we feel a resonance with someone, a true connection, we know. The soul recognizes what the mind might not yet understand. She stood up, pacing to the viewport that looked out at the stars. When you helped me, when you touched my hand, I felt something I've never experienced before. A harmony, a recognition. It was like finding a missing piece of myself. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, trying to process this information. So when you said we should soul weave? I was proposing that we bond, Zara finished. That we join our souls in the ancient way of my people. And you said yes. Because I thought it was a thank you ritual. Marcus protested. If I'd known you were proposing. Marriage, Zara supplied quietly. The human equivalent would be marriage, though soul weaving is far more intimate. It creates a permanent psychic link between the bonded pair. Marcus stared at her, his mind reeling. Permanent? Traditionally, yes. Though. She turned back to him, and there was something hopeful in her expression. The bond can only be completed if both parties truly consent. If one person is unwilling, the weaving will not take hold. But you're here, Marcus pointed out. Which means you think I'm willing. Zara's skin seemed to dim slightly. I felt the resonance between us. I hoped that perhaps you felt it too. But if I was wrong, if you were merely being kind. She moved toward the airlock, and Marcus felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to stop her. Wait. Zara paused, looking back at him. I did feel something, Marcus admitted. When we touched, when we talked. I've been thinking about you for 3 days straight, which is not like me at all. The resonance, Zara said softly. It calls to like souls across the void. Marcus took a deep breath. Okay, let's say I'm interested in learning more about this soul weaving thing. What would that involve? Zara's eyes brightened, the stars in them beginning to twinkle again. It would begin with a deeper connection. We would share thoughts, emotions, memories. You would experience what I experience, and I would know your heart as you know mine. That sounds. Marcus paused, trying to find the right word. Intense. It is, Zara agreed. But also beautiful. Imagine never being truly alone, never having to wonder what someone is thinking or feeling. Imagine having someone who understands you completely, who accepts all of you without judgment. Despite himself, Marcus found the idea appealing. He'd been alone for so long, drifting from system to system, never forming lasting connections. The thought of having someone who truly understood him was both terrifying and tantalizing. What would happen if we tried and it didn't work, he asked. Then we would part as friends, Zara said simply. But I don't think that will happen. The resonance is too strong. Marcus looked at her standing there in his ship, beautiful and alien and offering him something he'd never thought possible. The logical part of his mind screamed warnings about rushing into things, about the complications of interspecies relationships, about the dangers of psychic bonds. But there was another part of him, a part that had been lonely for longer than he cared to admit, that whispered, "What if?" "How would we start?" he asked. Zara's smile was radiant. "With touch. Physical contact enhances the resonance, allows the souls to recognize each other more clearly." She moved closer, stopping just in front of him. "May I?" Marcus nodded, his heart hammering in his chest. Zara reached out and placed her hands on either side of his face, her palms cool against his skin. Immediately, that tingling sensation he'd felt before returned, but stronger now, spreading through his entire body. "Close your eyes," Zara whispered. "Open your mind." Marcus did as she asked, and suddenly he could feel more. It was like a second heartbeat, a warmth that wasn't his own. Images flashed through his mind, a world of crystal spires and floating gardens, the loneliness of being the last of her kind on a frontier station, the moment of recognition when she'd first seen him. "I can feel you," he breathed, his eyes snapping open to meet hers. "And I can feel you," she replied. "Your strength, your loneliness, your desire to protect others even when it puts you at risk." The connection between them pulsed, growing stronger with each passing moment. Marcus could sense Zara's emotions as clearly as his own, her hope, her fear, her growing affection for him. "This is incredible," he whispered. "This is only the beginning," Zara said, her voice filled with wonder. "If we continue, the bond will deepen. We will be able to share thoughts, communicate across vast distances, even share physical sensations." Marcus felt a flush of desire, both his own and Zara's, amplified by their connection. "And if we don't continue?" "The resonance will fade over time," Zara admitted. "But Marcus, I need you to know, I would never force this upon you. The choice must be yours, made freely and without coercion." Marcus looked into her star-filled eyes and saw his own wonder reflected there. He'd spent his entire adult life avoiding connections, avoiding the risk of being hurt or abandoned. But this felt different. This felt like coming home. "I want to try," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Zara's smile could have lit up the entire galaxy. "Then let us begin the true soul-weaving." As she leaned in to kiss him, Marcus felt the walls he'd built around his heart begin to crumble. Whatever happened next, he knew his life would never be the same. Marcus woke to the sensation of starlight dancing across his consciousness. It took him a moment to realize the feeling wasn't his own, it was Zara's, her natural Celestine awareness of cosmic energies filtered through their growing soul bond. She was curled beside him in his narrow bunk, her pale blue skin luminescent in the dim light of his quarters. 3 weeks had passed since she'd appeared in his airlock, and their connection had deepened beyond anything Marcus could have imagined. What had started as a tingling sensation had evolved into something far more profound, a constant awareness of each other's presence, emotions, and thoughts. "Good morning," Zara murmured without opening her eyes, her voice carrying both spoken words and a warm pulse of affection through their bond. "Morning," Marcus replied, marveling at how natural it felt to communicate on multiple levels simultaneously. Through their connection, he could sense her contentment, her growing love for him, and beneath it all, a current of excitement about their destination. They were approaching the Titan Belt, a notorious asteroid field where Marcus had been contracted to deliver medical supplies to a mining colony. It was dangerous work, the kind that paid well precisely because so many ships never made it through the shifting maze of space rocks and electromagnetic storms. The asteroids sing, Zara said, finally opening her star-filled eyes. I can hear their resonance through the ship's hull. It's beautiful but chaotic. Marcus sat up, immediately alert. Chaotic how? Dangerous? Through their bond, he felt Zara's senses reaching out, her Celestine abilities far more sensitive than any instrument on his ship. Her expression grew troubled. There's something else in the belt, she said, her voice tight with concern. Ships. 3 of them, running silent and dark. Marcus was already moving, pulling on his clothes with practiced efficiency. Pirates? Or worse, Zara replied, her own preparations equally swift. I sense hunger. Predatory intent. They made their way to the bridge, where Marcus immediately began scanning the asteroid field ahead. His instruments showed nothing unusual, but he'd learned to trust Zara's enhanced perceptions. Through their bond, he could feel her unease like a constant itch between his shoulder blades. There, Zara pointed to a cluster of asteroids roughly 10 kilometers ahead. They're using the mineral deposits to mask their signatures. Marcus adjusted his course slightly, trying to look like he hadn't noticed the hidden ships. Any idea what they're after? Us, Zara said simply. Or rather, me. I can feel their interest like a spotlight on my soul. Marcus felt a surge of protective fury that surprised him with its intensity. The emotion was amplified through their bond, and he saw Zara's eyes widen as she experienced his rage secondhand. Easy, she said, placing a calming hand on his arm. Your anger is intense. I can feel it burning through our connection. Sorry, Marcus muttered, trying to rein in his emotions. I'm still getting used to sharing everything I feel. Don't apologize, Zara said, her voice soft. Your desire to protect me is arousing. The shift in her emotional state hit Marcus like a physical blow. Desire, want, need, all of it flowing through their bond and mixing with his own feelings until he couldn't tell where his emotions ended and hers began. Zara, he said, his voice rough. We need to focus. I am focused, she replied, but her hand was moving up his arm, her touch sending electricity through their connection. I can feel what you're feeling, Marcus. The way your heart races when you look at me, the way your body responds to my touch. An alarm klaxon cut through the moment, and Marcus spun back to his instruments. 3 ships had emerged from the asteroid field, their weapons already charging. Bounty hunters, Marcus said, recognizing the configuration. They must have a contract on you. Not just any bounty hunters, Zara said, her face pale. Those are Ravager-class ships. They specialize in capturing beings with psychic abilities. The lead ship opened a communication channel, and a gravelly voice filled the bridge. Merchant vessel, this is Captain Vex of the Bloodhound. Prepare to be boarded. We have a legal salvage claim on your passenger. Legal my ass, Marcus growled, his hands flying over the controls. Zara, strap in. This is going to get rough. But instead of securing herself, Zara moved to stand behind his chair, her hands resting on his shoulders. No, she said. We do this together. What are you? Marcus began, then gasped as their bond suddenly flared with new intensity. Through their connection, he could feel Zara's consciousness merging with his, her enhanced spatial awareness overlaying his piloting instincts. Suddenly, he could sense the asteroid field in 3 dimensions, could feel the gravitational eddies and electromagnetic currents that would normally require instruments to detect. His hands moved on the controls with inhuman precision, guided by Zara's intuitive understanding of space and motion. The stellar wanderer dove between 2 massive asteroids, using their bulk to shield the ship from the bounty hunter's initial volley. Marcus, guided by Zara's senses, threaded the needle through a gap that should have been impossible for a ship of their size. Impossible, came Captain Vex's voice over the comm, no human pilot could make that maneuver. He's not just human anymore, Zara said, her voice carrying both aloud and through their mental link. "We are one." Marcus could feel the truth of her words. Their bond had evolved beyond simple emotional sharing, they were truly synchronized, their minds working in perfect harmony. He was the pilot, she was the navigator, and together they were something greater than either could be alone. The bounty hunters gave chase, but they were fighting a losing battle. Marcus and Zara moved through the asteroid field like dancers, their combined abilities allowing them to navigate paths that would have destroyed any other ship. When one of the hunters tried to cut them off, Zara's precognitive abilities warned them seconds before the ambush, and Marcus was able to evade with a maneuver that left their pursuers crashing into an asteroid. "Two down," Marcus said, his voice tight with concentration. "The third is breaking off," Zara reported, her consciousness still expanded through their bond. "But he's not retreating. He's calling for backup." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold of space. "How much backup?" "A lot," Zara said, her mental voice grim. "Word is spreading. The bounty on a bonded Celestine is apparently higher than I thought." They cleared the asteroid field and jumped to hyperspace, but Marcus knew it was only a temporary reprieve. If bounty hunters were actively seeking Zara, nowhere in the galaxy would be safe for long. "We need to talk," he said once they were safely in hyperspace. They made their way to the small common area of his ship, where Zara curled up on the couch, her legs tucked beneath her. Marcus could feel her emotional state through their bond, fear, guilt, and beneath it all, a deep well of love for him that took his breath away. "I should leave," she said quietly. "This is my burden to bear, not yours." "Like hell," Marcus replied, sitting beside her and taking her hands in his. "We're bonded, remember? Your burdens are my burdens." "But the danger is part of life," Marcus interrupted. "Zara, I've been alone for 15 years. I've drifted from system to system, never staying anywhere long enough to form real connections. But with you, for the first time in my life, I feel like I belong somewhere. Like I'm part of something bigger than myself." Through their bond, he felt her surprise at the depth of his feelings. "You really mean that?" "I do," Marcus said, bringing her hand to his lips. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Zara's smile was radiant, and through their connection, Marcus felt her joy like sunlight on his skin. "Together," she agreed. As they held each other, their bond pulsing with shared love and determination, Marcus realized that their relationship had crossed another threshold. They weren't just romantically involved anymore, they were true partners, bound by something deeper than mere attraction or affection. But in the back of his mind, he couldn't shake the feeling that their real challenges were just beginning. The bounty hunters would be back, and next time, they'd be ready for the combined abilities of a bonded pair. Still, as he felt Zara's love surrounding him like a warm embrace, Marcus found he wasn't afraid. Whatever the galaxy threw at them, they would face it as one. The stars aligned for a reason, and Marcus was beginning to understand that his destiny was inextricably linked with the incredible woman in his arms. Their soul weaving was complete, but their story was just beginning.